Hello YouTube, it's Tony. So today I'll do my perspective on Runescape 3 Ironman mode. Now Ironman mode was released a little over 5 years ago, so what better time to make a video than now? Personally, I've been playing Ironman for a little over 2 years, and I've max mined recently this past June. In case you don't know already, I do have a full Ironman series which I'll leave the link in the description. As a disclaimer, I have played Ironman mode quite differently than most others would have. One of the biggest examples for this was that I primarily focused on maxing and skilling goals instead of the weapon upgrades. The format of this video is the good, the bad, the ugly, and finally the overall summary of Ironman mode. Just because I say something negative about Ironman mode doesn't mean I dislike this at all, okay? Just keep that in mind. I'm trying to state my perspective for you to decide whether you want to enjoy this mode or not. For those who don't know what Ironman mode is, here are the basics. Well, obviously you cannot trade, use the Grand Exchange, or pick up any items from anyone else. Just about anything where you could have received transfer items will not work on Ironman mode. Also, you're not allowed to use Treasure Hunter or earn any XP rewards from mini games. As for group activities, you're actually allowed to do this with other Ironmen, well, except for regular dungeoneering that is. That means you can essentially do group bossing or elite dungeons. The first section I'll get into are the good things about Ironman mode. The biggest reason why people play Ironman mode is because there's no treasure hunter to help you throughout your journey. The other reason Ironman mode can be enjoyable is because of the old style of playing RuneScape, where you had to gather items and process them yourself. It's the same way fishing and cooking or woodcutting and firemaking would have worked. You also spend a lot of time in early game content because nowadays, main accounts could easily skip a lot of low level content. Now for Ironman mode, you cannot buy supplies for skills or better yet weapon upgrades. That means you feel more sense of accomplishment after every goal because you pretty much have to work for everything, instead of just having to buy your way through this. Every upgrade progression would mean something, whereas on main accounts, you could easily skip a tier 80 weapon if you had enough money to buy a tier 90 or a tier 85 weapon. Also, there is certain content that's Ironman friendly, whereas it's rarely played on main accounts. Those include Dagonoth Kings, solo dungeoneering, mining gem rocks, and pretty much the list goes on. As for the Ironman PVM community, they tend to be more friendly and less elitist. A lot of Ironman clans such as Iron PVM Without a Space will take people who are undergeared to Beastmaster in order to get their codex. So if you have no PVM experience on your main account but you have the right gear setup for Ironman, then you can pretty much get into any high level boss team. Finally, there's no staking addiction. Now you'd be surprised at how many rich main accounts tend to stake. Of course, they can drop and trade supplies to their main account, but then again, I've seen people claim that they lose their staking addiction just because of playing Ironman mode. Now that I've talked about the good section for Ironman, let's talk about the bad part of Ironman. The first problem is that this game isn't fundamentally designed for Ironman. The resource ratio of gathering to production skills isn't proportional. From the day RuneScape was invented, trading has always been a thing, so that is why people always relied on trading for anything. One of the biggest imbalances would be herb lore because there are a lack of training methods outside of using lamps, quests, or even jack of trades. Also, crafting and range armor do not align because for the green dragonhide armor, it requires 40 defense to wear, but it requires 57 to 64 crafting. Now as for construction, you gotta wait for miscellanea or have to cut a lot of logs in this case. Actually way past 99 for this. However, mining and smithing rework did make him a little bit more proportional, so I'm glad they made this update here. The other issue is that because we're allowed to group with other Ironmen, it kind of ruins the spirit of Ironman solo mode. Unfortunately, the reason this was implemented was because there were certain group bosses that were impossible to solo. So instead of allowing only group bosses to be grouped, you can group with other Ironmen for every boss in this game, including the giant mole. I'm not going to put this as ugly because this is an issue that most of us will have to accept. Think about it this way, you can essentially get carried for a chaotic weapon with another high level Ironman even if you don't do any dungeoneering. While it does make this game a lot easier, but at least it makes it more enjoyable and social. Finally, the loot share system isn't fair when it comes to unique drops. A lot of times when it comes to loot share, people will get sniped for their unique drops. The loot share potential can easily be abused, and I've seen some people with high loot share potential still fail to get a drop. This usually becomes an issue for bosses like Nex or Vindicta if you're doing this in a group. let's get into the ugly section of Ironman. One of the worst parts of Ironman mode is that events are way too common. These include Spring Fair, Summer Skill Off, Beach Party, and pretty much the list goes on. They have been pretty bad for the integrity of this game, but especially worse for Ironman because if you don't go on, you're gonna miss out on a lot of XP on skills that would have been otherwise really hard to train. And then the other problem is that dailies can be a bit hard to manage. There are some dailies that Ironman would have done that main accounts would not have done. These include Shooting Stars, Evil Trees, buying runes from Runeshop, Wicked Hood, Broad Arrows, and of course, there's a long list to go on for this. Now a lot of people dislike doing dailies, and I myself, while I don't mind doing dailies, but on Ironman mode, there are far too many dailies that are worth doing. Because of this, it's very time consuming, and if you avoid doing dailies, you're gonna miss out on a whole lot of things. The other thing that people don't like about Ironman is that there's a lot of planning involved if you want to complete something. Sometimes it feels like one small favor where if you have to do one small task, it becomes a lot of tasks you have to do at once. This can be fun because there's incentive to play longer, but sometimes it can feel like a grind. So one of the biggest reasons people don't like Ironman mode is because of the sheer number of helpful quests that they have to do. Sometimes doing quests can feel like a chore even though it is quite fun. Gathering supplies for bossing at high levels, well, that is also pretty time consuming. Specific examples include fishing and cooking for food, gathering energies for invention, making overloads from scratch, and then we have the money for death costs, and pretty much there's a lot to list here. And finally, the biggest issue with Ironman mode is that you're stuck to one boss because it offers you the biggest impact to upgrades. Obviously you can do other bosses, but it's not going to give you a progressive upgrade that's noteworthy compared to one boss. Araxxor is a particularly perfect example for this because they drop tier 92H weapons. Noxious weapons are a huge stepping stone between mid-level PVM and high-level PVM. Unfortunately, the issue is that we cannot buy pheromones, so you're gonna have to wait every day unless you want to handle 300% enrage consistently. For this reason, that is why I'm kind of burned out from Ironman mode because I'm pretty much forced to do Araxxor every single day if I want to get this weapon quickly. I mean, I could have otherwise went with Ascensions instead, but they take far more in-game hours. For low levels, you might face this issue to a lesser extent. Overall, Ironman isn't for everyone, and no, this is not a knock on Ironman just because I criticize the negative parts of this. In my opinion, I think Ironman can be very fun because it offers a dynamic playstyle and the community is really nice. A lot of it involves you getting out of your comfort zone and adapting to what the game will give you. With that being said, what are your thoughts on Ironman mode? Do you enjoy playing this mode? And if so, why do you enjoy playing Ironman mode? If you don't enjoy playing Ironman mode, what's keeping you from playing this?